Hi everyone, Sarah from Homfray Embroidery. I've left the studio and I have come outside doing something a little bit different today. So my embroidery classes in the forest are coming up very soon, and I know a lot of you are not able to come. You're spread all around the world. You're not able to join me. So what I would like to do is do a little project just for you so that you can join in along with me as I do the class, and you can do this little project, and hopefully that you can find some inspiration wherever you are and wherever you live in the world, and you can make this little project along with me. So I've come out into our local country park. We're really lucky to have one right on our doorstep, but you could pop out to your local park or into your garden, or if you've got a forest nearby like I have, you can make a little trip out into the forest, because we're going to collect a few leaves. So this class is all about connecting your embroidery to the environment that you're in. It doesn't have to be woodland. It might be by the seaside, you might be in the mountains, but I'm going to use the woodland. And it's about connecting your embroidery to the woodland and bringing some inspiration into your work from your environment. So what I'm going to do today is, we're in the woods, I'm going to go and have a look at some leaves and pick some really nice shaped leaves, collect just what I need for this project, and I'm going to take them home, and then I'm going to show you what we're going to do with them. So come with me and let's go and see what we can find. So we've got a really nice walk around the park. It's a bit windy today, but the sunshine is out. It's really lovely. We've got some lovely fresh air and a little bit of exercise. And I've got a little bag of goodies. I've got some leaves in here. So I'm going to head back to the studio and we're going to have a little play with the things that I found. So there was a lot of inspiration out in the woods today, but I just wanted to focus on just the leaves only, because it can be a bit overwhelming with all that's going on there. So I just concentrated on the leaves, and I've got those here. If you're interested, by the way, in my foraging bag, my little bag made out of acorns and oak leaves, which I dyed myself from the forest. If you're interested in that and how I made that, I'll put that video up at the end of this one, so do hang around and check that one out. So I've got a collection of leaves, and I've actually pressed them between some paper towels. I just want them nice and flat so that I've got the shapes to use. So I just put them between some paper towels. So I got quite a nice selection, and I just concentrated on getting some that were different shapes, as many different shaped leaves as I could, and getting different sizes as well. So getting some bigger ones and some smaller ones. And there's a couple there that are together that are quite nice. That's a nice different shape there. Not too worried about the colours, because I can interpret that how I would like to. So I've got a couple of sheets of those. And some larger ones here. So that was a little selection I've got, and I have just pressed them flat. So we're going to use the shape. They're a little bit delicate, so I'm going to pick a couple of them, and then I'm going to show you how you can put these into your embroidery. So I'm going to work on felt for this project. I really like working with felt, and I don't think we've done very much of it on this channel, but it can be so beautiful to make nice designs and quite easily. And then we're going to stitch on top of the felt as well. I've got some wool felt here. If you can get some with some wool content, it's nicer, but to be honest, any kind of felt will work for this that you can get hold of. Have a little look in your local market stores might have some, or your local haberdashery shop or somewhere like that. Lots of places sell felt, especially in the kids section as well. You can have a little look in there if you can't find any. And I picked a few colours out. I've got this sort of nice set of colours that go together quite nicely, some greens and some browns and some yellows, some quite sort of natural colours, and I'm just going to stick with that sort of palette. And what I'm going to do is very simple, is I'm going to use my leaves that I've collected in the woods as a template, and I'm going to draw around them. So we'll start with a simple one. It's a nice shape there. I'm not worrying too much about what colour I'm going to use where. I'm just going to cut some different ones out, and I'm going to draw around my leaf. I'm going to use it as a template. So I've got a black water and fade proof pen that I'm going to draw around it with. Just have a think about which side of the leaf that you want to use, because if we're going to draw around it in pen and you don't want the pen to show, then make sure the pen is on the back. So you can turn the leaf over if you like it a particular way round. So that's the back of the leaf. So when I draw around it, turn my felt over, that's the shape that I'll get. Doesn't matter so much with this one because it's pretty symmetrical, but just have that in mind when you do this. And you might think, I can just jump on the internet and I can find some leaf shapes on the internet. Yes, you can do that, which you're absolutely welcome to do that, especially if you can't get out necessarily. But there's something about going to the actual source and picking the actual leaves, especially from where you live. This is a nice little record of the leaves in the area that I like to walk. And I've got so many different shapes as well and the different sizes. And it just makes you really stop and look at the leaves specifically rather than just going on the internet and Googling leaf shapes. These ones are actually specific to where I am, so it's a really nice personal touch, but you can do either, I don't mind which. This class that I'm running is about connecting with the environment you're in and using that to inspire you. So that's the idea behind this one today. So I'm just going to draw around this. Now these leaves are quite delicate, so I'm just going to be really careful here. But if you just go nice and slowly, you should be fine. And just nice and gently across the felt. It's not the easiest thing to draw on, so don't press too hard, which is why one of these drawing pens is really nice. A felt tip pen would work as well. And just draw around the shape of the leaf. Put that little stalk on as well. Make sure you've got the top there. Just hold it at an end, just lift it up, make sure you've got every little bit of it. We can remove that and just cut it out. Nice and easy. Got a nice sharp pair of embroidery scissors I'm going to use for this. I want to get some nice details in it, nice clean cut if you can. When you're cutting, by the way, it's easier to move the felt and just cut with the scissors rather than move the scissors. Turn the felt. Get a nicer cut. And then we have one leaf. Okay, so I have cut a few more already and done different colours. I've done those different shapes. And then I'm going to put these together and make a little composition. So I'm going to have a little play around with these and see what I like. And the great thing about doing this first is that you can move the shapes around. You can try some different patterns out and you can see what you like before you commit to stitching anything down. So you can see here all of the leaves that I have cut out. I've done some different sizes. I've got as many different shapes in there. I've done a few out of the felt in a couple of colours of the felt for each leaf, and I've just mixed those up a little bit, so I've got this nice composition. And then I've just tried some different variations of it, and what I did each time was I took a photograph of it so I knew where the leaves were, and then I moved them around again and I made another composition out of it. And I did this about 3 or 4 times until I found something that I really liked, and then again, don't forget to take a photograph because we're going to take them off and then put them on some fabric, so you need to remember where you put them. So do have a little play and see what designs you can come up with. I've made my design to fit on the screen for filming. You could do yours in a hoop and you could make a beautiful round design out of it, or you could make it to fit on a pillow, or you could put it on some clothing. So there's lots of variations you can do with this. So again, just have some fun playing and see what you can come up with. So I'm going to fix my felt leaves onto a fabric backing. So I've got a piece of linen here. I've got a backing of a cotton underneath that. I fixed it in some stretcher bars, and those are held in my versatile table clamp, so I've got my hands free to use. So that's my setup. And I've actually started quite a bit of this already. I've done quite a bit of stitching on this, but I will show you the whole process here on how to do this, so don't worry about that. So let me show you the last leaf that I'm going to add to it. So this is the leaf that's going to fit in here. So this is the actual leaf here, and this is the one that I have cut out. Now, just worth noting that when you draw around it and cut it out, it often gets a little bit bigger. So just bear that in mind. I quite like that though. You can just keep cutting it small if you want to. This has got some quite detailed edges. If I just take that felt one out of the way, it's got some quite detailed edges, but you don't necessarily need all of those in. You can do that with the stitching if you want. You just want that nice shape of the leaf to come out there, and this is what it looks like. So I've got some of those sort of little jagged edges on it. And I've got the nice shape of that leaf, and that's going to fit in there. So I'm just going to take that leaf out of the way. Place that in position. You can just hold that in place with a pin. So I suggest when you're doing this, if you want to do it as I have and make a little design out of it, you put them all in place and then you put a pin in them and make sure you've got them all pinned down before you do any stitching and you're happy with your composition. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to baste or tack those in place to stitch on them. So I'm going to use just a sewing cotton here. I've got quite a neutral colour. I've got a grey. The felt changes colour a lot, and you can pick a cotton to go with each colour leaf if you want to, but I found a neutral one is quite good because we're going to do some invisible basting, so we shouldn't be able to see the stitches anyway. So this is a really good way to just tack these down, baste these into position without seeing that stitching. You don't have to take it out afterwards as well. So I've just got a single piece of thread, little knot in the end. I'm just going to come up from underneath. We'll start in the little stem here. And I'm just going to come up and down very, very close to each other, so just a tiny little stitch up and down. You might just be able to see where the needle has come in and out, but if I just go down very close to where I came out, it should be pretty invisible. Now, just something to note about stitching on felt. It doesn't have a warp and a weft, it doesn't have a weave to it, it's not woven fabric, so it does disintegrate like this. And if I just pull on this, you can just sort of see how it moves. And you can see how it sort of changes shape and you can kind of mould it. And if you go near to the edge, it doesn't sort of fray, but it will come apart. It's quite fibrous. So you want to think about that when you're stitching. You're not going up in a hole and over and threading down another hole because it is not woven. So just make sure you take a little gap between coming up and coming down, but it'll pick up a few of those fibres. And just hold that in place. I'm just going to go all the way around the edge. And I'm just going to work around the very edge. You don't have to go too close to the edge because it will do that disintegrating thing that I've just shown you. And just spread them out. Get one in kind of in the corner if you've got a little corner. Just want to hold that down in place. So just think about where would I want my leaf to be held. And just those tiny little stitches straight up. It's a few of the fibres straight back down. So I'm just going to work around the whole of the leaf and then I can take my pin out. So if you're doing several leaves together, do that first. So pin them first and then baste them. Then you can take the pins out and everything's ready in place to start the stitching. Now I'm going to stitch on my design with these Burma Lana threads. So these are 50% wool, 50% acrylic. So I've got the wool of the felt and the wool in the thread. So they just go really nicely together. You don't have to use these. You can use whatever you like. If you want to use stranded cottons, that's fine, or a perle thread. Or you could use some silks. But I've just picked a limited palette. So I've kind of picked the colours that I've already got in my felt. So I've got the greens and those kind of browny yellows. And then I've just picked something a little bit darker. It's nice to have something that just pops out a little bit. Unless you want a nice muted palette, that's absolutely fine. If you're not sure about how to pick colours, we've got a really good video up here. Very simple way to pick a colour palette. So do go and check that one out if you're not sure about colours and how to choose colours. And then I've picked a couple that are a bit surprising. I've picked a couple of purples and this really dark brown. But I think when they're just using one strand of it and you're just using a little bit of it, it just adds a really nice little pop of colour to my piece. I'm going to try those out as well. So those are the threads that I'm going to use. And all of the stitches that I'm going to use on these leaves are ones that we have done in our little stitch sampler project. If you've seen that and are following along with me, they're all on here. There's a playlist for all of those. I'll put that up at the end of this video, but I will link the stitches in the description below this video. I will put down what I've used and I will go over it as well. I'll go through every leaf at the end and show you what stitch I've used where, but they are all in this project. So if you want to do these stitches, do go and check that one out. I'm just going to use one strand of this. If you're using a stranded, you could use 2 or 3 strands of a stranded cotton. So
So I'm going to use one, and I'm going to start at the bottom and come up this little stem. So what I want to do now, this is held in place because we've basted it, but I'm going to put some decorative stitches on it now and make some nice patterns out of it. And the one I like to start with is just a simple running stitch. I'm just going to go all the way around the leaf in a running stitch. I'll show you some of the ones I've done in the other leaves as well. It don't have to be a running stitch, but it's quite a nice one to start with. So that's all I'm going to do, is go around here in that, and you can see these little marks where my basting stitches are, so I put those just inside that edge and we can go over those with that stitch. I'm just going to use my little starting knot on the top. That will get cut off, and you can either turn it over and weave it under that backing fabric on the back, or I'm just going to do my 2 little stitches on the edge here underneath that felt. Just move it to the side. That just saves me turning the frame over while it's on the camera, but just turn that over and weave it through on the back if you want to. And I'm going to start right at the bottom of this stem here, and just a little running stitch, simplest stitch you can do. And I've just picked a really contrasting colour. I'm using this dark green so that we'll see this standing out. So obviously these are not realistic leaves now. I've started from the original source, from the original leaf, but now I'm just going to add my creative ideas to it. I'm just going to make these beautiful patterns on it. So really simple, just all the way around the outside of this leaf in this stitch, and then we'll come and try another stitch. So I'm going to put some veins on my leaf. Chain stitch is quite a nice one for this. This is a bigger leaf, so a bigger stitch is nice. You could do a stem stitch, you could do another running stitch if you want to. Just going to go right up the middle. So you make a little loop up and down where you want your stitch to start, make a little loop, come up inside it, tension it away, so you make that little chain like so, and then we're going to do continuous chains. So I'm going to go back into that hole, make another loop and do another chain. This stitch is on that stitch sampler playlist if you want to see it in more detail. So I'm just going to go right up the middle for this. I've chosen this sort of fairly bright purple, which is standing out on its own a little bit at the minute, but I'll bring that into some of the other leaves. Just sort of think about how you use your colours throughout, and just use a little bit here and a little bit over here, and that will just balance them up throughout the piece. If you just stick one purple in the middle of one leaf, it's going to look a little bit odd. So I will bring that colour in again. So until it's finished, don't judge it. That's basically what I'm trying to say. Just keep stitching. So I'm going to go all the way up the middle, then I'm going to come back to the bottom, and I think I'm going to go out up each one of these, and then we'll look at some stitches to fill in between those chain stitches. And when you get to the end of your chain stitch, just make sure you finish it off properly, because until I fasten that last one down, let's just do one more, it's not properly finished. So I'm going to come up inside that loop there, and then we just take that needle down the other side of the loop just to anchor that in position, and then I can just weave that needle under the back. And what I just want to mention at the minute is, if you're not sure where to put your veins, then you can refer to the original leaf. So you can see them, let me just switch this right side. You can see the vein go right up the middle of these here. It does have lots of little ones going off at the side, so you could put more in if you want to, but I'm going to go a bit more of a decorative route now. I've got my basic leaf shape and the veins in the right place, so I'm going to use some decorative stitches. But you can go back to your original source material and you can see what it actually does, and then it'll look a little bit more believable, I suppose is the word. So I'm going to leave those 3 veins as they are, and then we're going to choose some decorative stitches to go in these gaps. So there's lots of different stitches that we can do to fill in the gap. So I'm going to do some little star stitches. These are really nice textural ones. Just a little cross with another little cross over the top of that in between the gaps, because we're going straight across the middle. That gets nice and high in the middle and you get really nice texture on it. And I've just chosen this brown colour. I've just pulled that from sort of these leaves around it, use a little bit of that. So I'm going to do a few of these in here, and then I think I might sort of fade them out a bit and put something else in the top. So it's quite a big leaf, we can get a couple of different things in this one. There's no right or wrong to this, just have fun playing with these different stitches. Maybe you want to try a stitch you've never done before and see what that looks like. If you're doing the sampler with me, you could take one that you like from the sampler and say, what would that look like in this leaf? Let's do 3. It's going up there quite nicely. So Maybe we'll do 3 up each side. I have not planned this, you can tell. Just trying stuff out, seeing what works. And you picked your colours already, so you can't really go too wrong. See, I'm going to put 4th one in. Having said I'm going to do 3, I'm going to do 4. Just going with it and seeing what fits. You could sit and draw it all out and plan it first if you want to, but I think it's quite nice just to experiment a little bit. Not worry too much about planning. I usually plan. I'm a bit of a planner. So for me to do this is quite unusual. That's quite nice. I quite like that. So I'm going to do 4 up that side. Maybe, should I do some in here? I'll see what that size looked like and maybe we'll try a different stitch in the middle. Okay, so I got to here and I thought, I really like these. I'm going to keep going. So I actually went around the top and sort of did a bit of a, not an outline because it's not outside, but a little bit of a row of them just inside the outline of the leaf. I thought that looks really nice and just ties it all together. But I've left a little bit of space here and I thought we'd do a bit of seeding in here. So this is a really great stitch for filling in some areas if you're not sure what to do. And you maybe like the fabric a little bit to show underneath the fabric to come through. So seeding can be really nice. You can do lots of different kinds, single, double. You can do these little Z's, you can do little triangles, but I think we're going to have a go at this one. It's just 2 stitches in a little V shape. I think that would be a really nice one to fill in this area with. So I'm going to do it in this dark brown. So it's just little straight stitches and they just meet at one of the ends of the stitch. Just makes a little V shape. I'm going to scatter them around and do them in different directions because that looks nice. Could change sizes so they could get a little bit smaller as they go up. There's so many things you can do with this. If it's too much choice, just pick one stitch and just concentrate on one stitch at a time. You could just maybe do 3 stitches for the whole thing if you wanted to. It's still going to look lovely with the different shaped leaves and the different thread colours if it's all a little bit too much, or you can just take the ones I like. I'm going to show you these other leaves in a second, so you could always pause the video and note what I've used and use that combination if you want to. Because you'll note I'm not drawing on where any of these go. I'm just doing it fairly freestyle, and if you measured them they wouldn't be even, but nobody's going to measure them. Embroidery police are not coming. So being fairly freestyle about it, just right up into those star stitches, and I can jump across here and I can put one in here. Looks quite nice actually, tying it together nicely. So I'm just going to fill in this shape and then we'll have a look and see if we think it needs anything else or whether I think that leaf is finished. So I just added a couple of little ones here, just sort of ties this bit into this bit. So we've got some of this stitch and this stitch in all parts of the leaf, just helps to tie it all together a bit. And then I did a few down the stem because I thought that wasn't looking quite strong enough to hold my leaf up. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches in that. So a bigger leaf you can get a couple more stitches in if you want to. So what I'm going to do now is I've got a couple of stitches left to do on some of the other leaves, so I'm just going to finish that off and then we'll come back and look at it all and I'll just walk you through what stitch I've used for what leaf. So I finished all my stitching, but I just thought I'd show you all the leaves that I have actually used for this one and the order that I've used them in, because of course you can practice your design with the leaves. You don't have to cut them out and then move the felt around and try the felt in the design. You can just move the leaves around and find a design you like with the leaves. So that's the leaves that I have used, and this is what the finished thing looks like. There we go, I'm quite pleased with that. Considering I didn't design it and I just sat down and kind of went with it, I'm quite pleased with how that came out. So I'm just going to go round the leaves one at a time, just tell you which stitches I used for each leaf. So I'll put these stitches in the description below the video for each leaf. So I'll call this leaf number 1. We'll go round in a clockwise direction. So this one here was a running stitch around the edge of the leaf. I did that first to hold it in place, and then I decided it needed a bit of a stronger edge, so I've actually whipped that running stitch. So I've done a thread around the stitch that all sits on top of the fabric. It doesn't go through the fabric. You whip around those running stitches and it makes a continuous line, so that just made it stand out a little bit more. Then I've got my chain stitch down the centre here for the veins. So I've gone from this end here up to the top. Then I've gone back to the middle and gone out and back to the middle and out. Chain stitch will look different if you change the direction. If you start going back on yourself, it will look a little bit different. So I've gone back to the centre each time and gone out to the edge, and then I've just filled in between with a little bit of double seeding, which I've just faded out as I've gone towards the top, so a bit more solid down here and fewer stitches as I go up, so there aren't any in the top bit at all. So that's leaf number 1. Number 2 I've kept pretty simple really, just done this chain stitch just on the inside of the felt to anchor that down. That's a nice solid stitch. And then this is a blanket stitch up the middle. I was going to do 2 blanket stitches, one kind of opposite each other, but I quite like that half finished. I quite like asymmetrical design, so I just did it up the centre and just filled in one half and left the other side empty. So you've seen me do this big one, leaf number 3. So the running stitch around the outside, then I did the chain for the veins, and then we've got these little V-shaped seeding stitches, and then we've got the star stitches around the outside. So you can get a lot more in a bigger one, so that's a good one to play with if you want to try lots of different stitches. So leaf number 4 is another little simple one, and I just again started with that running stitch around the outside, and then I put the chain in the middle, the yellow chain, but decided it needed something else. I've gone with another running stitch around the outside of the chain, so sort of 2 layers of the running stitch in 2 green colours, this chain stitch here, and then I've done detached chain, so they're just a single chain on its own. I've done 3 of those in the middle, 1, 2 and 3 there, just as a little design feature in the middle of that leaf. So leaf 5 is the smallest stitch that I've got, so just 2 stitch in this one, so a blanket stitch around the edge, and then I've got a fly stitch down at the centre. So I started at the tip, best place to start with the fly stitch, and I've worked down the leaf towards the base, so just the 2 stitches in that one. So leaf number 6 was a fairly large one and quite a simple shape for this one, so I've done a back stitch around the edge of this one. That's the yellow stitch there. I've done my chain stitch for my veins coming out here, and I've just put a little bit of back stitch in and gone into running stitch just to sort of highlight the bottom of the veins. You can use stitches in lots of different ways. You can shade with them, you can make them more solid, you can make them less solid, so you can have a little bit of a play with your stitches and try and have some different effects with them, try and do some different effects. And then I've just got these little fern stitches in the corner of the veins here in the green, just to add a little bit of detail in there. Leaf number 7 is my favourite, I think. I really like the shape of this one, and again the blanket stitch around the edge in that quite strong purple colour, and then just a row of fly stitch in the veins in the middle in the lighter green. And I think sometimes you can just use fewer stitches and they can just work really nicely. They don't have to be complicated designs, you don't have to cram as many stitches in as you want, just 2 stitches in there, but with the colours combination and the shape of that leaf, I think that one works really well. And so the last one here, I've done a slightly different edge for this one. I've just used some straight stitches to anchor down this felt here, and it looks like the sort of spiky little bits on the edges of the leaves. Again, the chain stitch for the veins in the centre, and I've got some little eyelets in the yellow here just to add some detail in between each of the veins. So I'm quite pleased with that, and I've got a really nice little record of the trees and the plants and the leaves that are in my local area on the walk that I like to do every day. So it means something quite personal to me. They're the actual leaves that I saw on my little walk around. So a really nice way to do quite a simple design. I hope you're inspired to have a go at this. You've got some nice trees near you. You might have some different kind of trees to trees that I've got. So go and have a look around your local area, see what you can find, and have a go at this very simple project. So if you want a reminder of the stitches I've used in this project, those are in the description below the video for each leaf. You can check out this video up here. This is the stitch sampler video with all of these stitches in it. And you can check out my acorn and oak leaf bag down here on my Create channel as well if you want to see how I made that. Thanks for watching everybody. Give it a thumbs up if you've enjoyed it, and we will see you next time.